Any of you? Any zingers there?
The same one that Amanda zinged.
Ego, yeah. Messages and spirit messages.
Yeah.
What was the question? What's the dilemma?
Are you able to discern ego messages from spirit messages?
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. How do you tell the difference between you speaking and talking to yourself and spirit speaking to you?
I think that, well, just in my own experience, that the messages are often, they have a very different feeling. I think that when I don't know, it's often the ego, and when I do know, it's often what feels like a higher truth. The messages are often not very logical. They're not predicting or categorizing usually. They're sort of, they're maybe broader, they're maybe less, almost like less specific but more important. So if I ask a question like, should I go on a walk this afternoon or should I take a nap? Then, you know, I might have this like maybe 6 different voices talking about, you know, well, it might rain, or, you know, well, what if that, or, oh God, you know, like, you're too fat anyway, I don't know, whatever, and and then, like, another voice might, it might not even be a voice, it could just be a sense of, like, that sounds nice, maybe that would be nice, or just something, like, really simple, and it's not saying, like, yeah, you need to, but it might just be like, that sounds kind of nice.
No pressure.
And then just, like, kind of goes away.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I've never thought of it that way before. It's sort of, I know I've used the feeling of, well, what thought feels heavier and what thought feels lighter. So it's kind of the same thing I think you're saying.
Right.
That lighter, happier one is usually spirit talking, and the heavier one is usually
It's
the ego.
fear-based or something.
What about you, Misha?
Well, so for me, it's there's like a feeling sense that comes with it, like a feel, like not a physical sensation. It's not like I get goosebumps or something like that, but it's more of like a knowing. And I feel that most often when I'm with the plants and I'm asking like if I can harvest. It's very clear if I'm getting a yes or a no. It's more if I'm asking questions for myself that I get like caught up, like trying to think of an example. Should I stop working at a particular place that we both know? You know?
Yes, yeah.
Those kinds of questions,
Yeah.
like where it might this impact my profession, those kinds of questions. That's
And
where
then
I get
how
a
do
little-
you know that it's your ego or your spirit? How do you know the difference?
Still working on that. But I mean, but when I know something, it's very like
It's
like,
just a clear.
It feels right. Well, it's actually kind of like what both of you said. It feels lighter. I feel like there's no longer a question. It's just, so it's like just a knowing.
Yeah,
There's no mental chatter associated with it.
yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
For me, like, if I ask a serious question, it usually doesn't come right away. And it comes in a different way. Like, I'll see the word written out in my head, if that makes sense. And it'll just randomly come at a time you least expect it. And that's where I'm like, and then I'll like, maybe the question I asked is something I could actually find online or something, look it up, and I'll be like, oh, that's what that is. Or, you know, things like that. Like, what is this? And yeah, that's sort of how I know it's something greater than myself.
Yeah.
Because
I also noticed that if it's fear motivated, you know, I don't catch on lots of times because I don't realize I'm being fearful. It's like, you know, my gut will clench, and it's like, you know, I'm scared to move ahead, or I'm in lack or in poverty, or I'm confused. But if it's spirit, it's like everything is lining up and the doors are opening. And a perfect example of that these last few weeks is when I almost went with another company with this whole renovation. And we found out today that the quote was $12,000 really off. And I said, well, I think it's about 8, but, you know, I felt like, well, you know, I tried to rationalize. I tried to figure it out. I tried to, you know, and all of the things that happened were good because the misinformation that we got gave us then, when we hit the other vendor, that gave them the opportunity to be fair, be square, and give us the information that we needed. We could tell how far we were off. They matched, when it came to buy the appliances, they matched all of the other competition's prices and gave us what we needed. But in this whole process, I found myself just feeling like frightened, scared, you know, afraid to change because, you know, whatever. And once I, did I tell the story last week about drawing the surrender and release card? Do you remember?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, right.
yeah,
You
yeah,
always
yeah.
draw the surrender.
When I got that message to surrender and release, then I changed directions and I opened to other possibilities, and that's when this whole last week, everything has been perfectly timed. Every resource that we've needed has been lined up.
Right on.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah,
that's
yeah, and the
great.
way is smooth, and you just know.
Yeah.
You know, I used to say, "Well, you know, you know."
Yeah.
So all of the chaos, fear, anxiety, that's all ego. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? Any other thoughts on that?
I think what's troubling is before you make a decision, all the ego chatter is going on. And I think the trouble I find is, well, how do I get to that still, small, quiet voice, the still, small voice within?
Mm-hmm.
And because I find oftentimes it's in hindsight, you know, where it's like I'll make the wrong decision and afterwards I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, the whole time I was getting these signs. But then if I make the right decision, it's like, oh, well, yeah, sure, I was getting these signs. But in the middle of it, it's like you've got the still small voice, but it's surrounded by chatter. And
Right.
it's kind of like, that is a challenge where it's like I know what the difference is, I know what the feeling is, but it's almost as if I can't find that one feeling I'm looking for amid all the chaos.
Or yes, another way of saying that is I just can't see. I don't have any clarity around that. You know, I can't see my way clear. Yeah. And it's interesting that you bring this up now, because in our next episode, what we're going to be talking about is finding your nurturing voice. And we're going to be working with that mess that goes on, that chaos that goes on in our heads, in our minds, and how our minds can sabotage us and be our enemies and gang up on us, and, you know, the messages that we're getting from our mind, or we're victims or whatever. And where is that part of us that helps us see clearly? Yeah. So we're jumping ahead a little bit, a little foreshadowing of what's to come.